All right, everyone, thank you for joining me on this training. It is March 26, 2024. My name is Joe Kelly. I am the president of Kelly Wright Real Estate, Modus Mortgage, the whole kit and caboodle. We do these trainings every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. This one's a little more important. I want to talk today in today's training about this NAR settlement. I know you guys have been hearing about it. I know everybody's been talking about it. I know there's a lot of trepidation out there. I'm going to give you a little bit different perspective. I think you've probably seen things that have been released by the NAR, local associations, things like that. I've been doing this for 3 decades. I don't know, 60,000 transactions I have managed. If you're not familiar with Kelly Wright, we offer 100% commission in 14 different states around the country. We are growing. We're adding Tennessee, Hawaii. So we are growing very quickly because of our commission structure and the level of support and products you get. It is a fantastic place. And it actually fits really well to what is going on with the Association of Realtors and this NAR settlement. We were way out ahead of this sucker. I've been out ahead of this sucker for decades. And I've been a thorn in the side of the National Association of Realtors in Chicago. They know who I am. I've always thought that there was some colluding. I knew that there was some collusion at some level, and I know they have not admitted any guilt here, but that's what this lawsuit was predicated on, the Sitzer lawsuit out of Kansas City, and all the subsequent lawsuits that have popped up. Now, the settlement. Let's talk a little bit about that. The settlement itself is basically to say, let's make this thing go away. And we will concede a few things along the way. So it does protect almost all realtors in the country. There are some exceptions. There's a couple companies out there. I think the Berkshire company out of Edina, Minnesota. I mean, I think they're still litigating. I don't think they've settled yet. Any company that has over $2 billion in sales is not protected unless they have negotiated something specifically. So it's a fuzzy area, and you're going to see and hear me say that a lot in this call. It's a fuzzy area. We don't know how this thing is going to shake out quite yet. I know what the realtor PR avenue is. I know what they're trying to do and trying to convey and what they're trying to protect. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But right now, the settlement is basically saying, okay, we're going to make this go away, and we're going to make changes to who pays that buyer commission. Okay, we've been doing this for 100 years, the realtors and real estate in America, and all of a sudden, it's just changing very quickly. All of a sudden, we have to look at different ways that we do our business. Now, before I get too deep into any of this, I promise you, and again, I've been doing this as long as anybody. I have got a gray hair for every transaction I've ever done. 60,000 of them I have managed, and I promise you, the sky is not falling. That is very clear. I actually am pretty optimistic about where real estate is going. I'm very optimistic about our model and how that fits into this narrative. I wouldn't be as optimistic if I was one of the big box companies. If I were one of the big box companies and I was setting commissions for years and years, I'd be a little bit worried. But we've been at the other end of the spectrum. We've been open to letting agents always set their own commissions, to talk to their clients and figure out what's best for all parties. And that I've always been adamant about for 30 years. So it basically is making the making the lawsuits go away. They're settling. They're paying $400 something million over 4 years. They're going to be paying that out, and of course, they're going to be getting that from the realtors. So, you know where your fees are going there. Yeah, 418 million exactly. So this is about those commissions. And I think a lot of us in this industry are questioning, are we still going to get paid for our work? Yes, you are. What work you do is going to be a little bit different, especially working with buyers. So the the fact of the matter is something had to give, something had to change. There was collusion in the marketplace. I firmly believe that. I was hoping there would be a different outcome so it wouldn't be quite as stressful on agents, but here we are. Now, Kelly Wright's based in Washington State. Washington State has been way out ahead of this. So if you're in another state, you might be like, oh my God, what is happening out here? We have been ahead of this. And we've already changed the forms in Washington to reflect what was coming. So there are new listing agreements. There's new buyer agency rep agreements. There are new forms to even get the seller to agree to any sort of seller concession. You know, so if there's compensation, even if the buyer's agent is giving that compensation to one of the parties, you have to get the seller permission to do that. So again, these changes are happening. Now, we've been doing it in Washington State already for a few months. Every state is going to follow. You're going to see it from whatever state you're operating in. You're going to see new forms are coming, new buyer rep agreements are coming, new requirements by law are coming. I'm not so sure that every state is going to make it law, but I know Washington did. Oregon's doing it right now. California's doing it. I mean, everybody's going to be doing it. And some states might just require, you know, a minor adjustment to a listing agreement, might not even require a buyer's rep agreement. Be kind of iffy there. I don't think they're going to do that because they might be setting themselves up for liability. But I do think they're all going to have adjusted, amended forms, and those forms are going to be coming in the next few months. So this settlement is basically saying, okay, we are going to try to implement it. You got to always watch the nuances of the words they'll use, because it might just be difficult to implement it by July of this year. But they might, you know, so keep your mind open, stay open to anything and all changes. They're not going to do it any sooner than that, but the states, with the legislator of your state, the legislatures of your state, and the realtor associations are going to work together to try to make these adjustments to the forms. So there will be forms changes, and we'll keep our team, our Kelly Wright agents, apprised of those as soon as they come out with whatever state you're doing. So a lot of these trainings over the next few months are going to be about different states and the different forms and the different adjustments that are coming down the pike. But again, I'm going to interject a bunch here. The sky is not falling. I think this actually could be a healthy, somewhat healthy change to the marketplace. It's going to be confusing a little bit, but you know, hey, that's just life. That's how these things evolve. So the settlement has happened. The litigation is going to stop, hopefully, and we are going to see these adjustments. Okay, so let's talk about the sellers first. The sellers they're just bizarre. And again, like a lot of people out there in the marketplace, they don't know what this is. They think, hey, I don't have to pay a commission anymore. Really? Like, that's what you think? Like, is that what you want? So I get that they would love to keep more money in their pocket. They'd rather do that. But if you think it through, it's not the best way to go. It's if you don't offer some sort of compensation for people who are working with buyers to bring those buyers in, you're probably going to be at a disadvantage in the marketplace. So one, you're going to limit the number of buyers that are coming in. Two, those buyers and the sellers need to be represented by different parties. We know that. We know every state out there they've got certain levels of issues with dual agency. I see it all the time. I've been audited by, I don't even know how many times and how many states. I mean, I talk to the auditors, I talk to the regulators. I've been doing this a long time. Again, I'll keep saying that, so bear with me. But they don't like dual agency. They don't like the listing agent handling both parties. So there's a real advantage to having someone negotiating on your behalf. We all know in this industry, once you get into those negotiations, once you get into the transaction, it can get complicated. There's a lot of timelines to follow, a lot of things that need to be done. And you can't just willy-nilly be like, hey, yeah, sweet, we're going to save some money, no problems here. There are problems there. And problems will arise with liability, with missing deadlines, with not getting stuff ordered, with not negotiating properly, either over negotiating or not negotiating enough. I think it is very, very important for both sides to have representation. That might sound like a realtor mantra, but that's one I believe in. I believe the buyers will benefit from having a buyer's agency agreement in place. Again, we'll talk about that agency agreement coming up, but the sellers are going to have an adjustment. So they're still going to have to do a listing agreement. The listing agreement's probably going to be, and we've seen this in Washington already, so I'm pretty sure this is what's going to happen. Listing agreement's going to be adjusted so that the compensation is delineated very carefully on the seller paying what for the listing agent and the seller paying what for the buyer's agent. Again, so it's in the past, it's kind of been like, hey, 6%, and you guys kind of split it up, and hey, don't worry about that. Well, worry about that now. Tea time. These little pieces of the puzzle need to be put in place. So understanding who is paying what is going to be very important. So the sellers need to also understand that paying compensation to a buyer's rep is the best way to attract more people to their home to sell it, or their property, or their commercial business. Doesn't matter. Paying something to the buyer's agent is going to be very important. And I firmly believe that 95% of transactions moving forward are going to have that. There's going to be 5% or so that are going to be out there, and they're going to be like, hey, I don't want to pay anybody, and I don't even want to pay my listing agent. They're going to have a hard time. It's like a FSBO. You know, you sell your property out there, and you sell it by yourself. You're going to have a hard time attracting buyers, a hard time negotiating the contract, a hard time keeping up with the paperwork, following it all the way through escrow and the close, and having a successful, easy, stress-free close. Those things are all going to be, you know, important when a buyer is represented by the buyer's agent. It's just, we all know that. So I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. And that will remain in place for the most part. There's going to be 5% out there, maybe 10, that just get weird about this thing until it settles down. So that's what's going to happen with the seller. You know, those two things, you basically, you're going to have a few adjustments to the listing contract. And then you're going to have that conversation about, do you want to offer compensation to a buyer's rep? Okay. So nothing too complicated, a little bit more of a conversation with the seller. All right. Now, let's talk about the buyer. This is where it gets a little tricky. And it's not that complicated if you understand that you're going to have what might have been an uncomfortable conversation with the buyer a few months ago. A few months from now, it's going to be a normal conversation. You're going to get used to it. It's a change that's going to happen, and you're going to get used to it, but you have to have that conversation with your buyer. And the conversation is very simply, look, we have a buyer's rep agreement. I know you've never signed one in the past, but now you're going to have to sign this buyer's rep agreement in the future. So that's going to be a big change. And a lot of people are just going to be like, hey, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to this other company over here. They're not going to make me do that. That's where the law comes into play. And I think it's very smart for the states to enact it at the law level, the state level. That's what we did here in Washington. So you can't go to another company and say, yeah, this other company is trying to charge me a buyer's rep fee and do an agreement. I don't like that. I've never done that before. I'm going to work with you. And that company has to say, nope, we do the same thing, because it is state law that you have to do this. So that's one. So you're going to have that conversation with your buyers. Hey, if I represent you and we drive around and we look at all these houses, you're going to have to sign a buyer's rep agreement. They might ask, well, I just want to look at one house. Okay, that's fine. Let's go look at that house. But after that, we're going to have that buyer's rep agreement. Oh, I want to look at 6 houses. No, that's too many. You know, so they're here in Washington, and again, Washington's on the forefront of real estate. That's why all these companies are here. You know, EXP, and and Zillow and Redfin and all these companies are here in Washington. It's kind of been on the forefront of real estate for quite a while. And so they really do have to sign this agreement at some point early in the process. Now, no one says, hey, 10 minutes or 1 hour or 2 days. There's none of that in the law. It just says early in the process. So you have to understand that it's very important going forward that these buyer's rep agreements will be in place. And especially if you're part of a realtor association, oh, I gotta careful there. I'm gonna get into that after I talk about the buyers here. But if you know, if you're not a part of the realtor association, maybe, but the realtor settlement says a buyer's rep agreement is a must. And most states will require that by law. So again, no way around it. Okay, so expect that conversation with your buyers. The other conversation you're going to have to expect with your buyers, it's a tough one, and do that, you know, take a deep breath. Hopefully you know them, you talk to them, is going to be that I need to be compensated for my time. I don't work for free. And so the buyer's rep agreement will most likely have, and again, we have it in Washington, will most likely have a section where you fill out the compensation for the buyer to agree to pay if the seller doesn't pay that compensation. And there's 3 different sections. You know, if the seller's offering less, if the seller's offering more. And again, those of you in Washington, we got people from all over the country on this call. So I know that you already know these things. I'm just trying to prepare everyone else in the country for what is coming. And so if the seller's offering less, you know, then how much does the buyer pay to make up that difference, and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get too deep into the details because it can get confusing, and I don't want all of our heads spinning at this point. So you're going to have to, as you get them to sign this buyer's rep agreement and you move forward with them on looking at houses, you're going to have to ask them, are you okay paying me this compensation if the seller won't pay compensation, if the seller won't offer compensation? And here's where some of the hard decisions are going to have to be made. If that seller says, no, I'm not going to pay you compensation. I heard about the lawsuit, the settlement, all this stuff. I don't have to pay squat anymore. Okay. Are we done then? And that can be hard. That's a hard conversation to have. And those conversations are going to happen. You're going to have buyers and sellers. Buyers saying, I'm not going to pay your compensation if the seller won't pay it. And sellers saying, I'm not going to pay your compensation. The buyer should pay that. And you're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. That's where your negotiating is going to have to start. Okay. So again, I'm trying to keep this pretty simple. I do see questions, and Matt and Kendra, thank you for answering those questions on the chat board.
I'm just holding them off till the end because a lot of the questions might be answered when you're done. So
yeah,
and
a lot of questions,
Q&A.
They're coming in pretty fast and furious. So again, I'm just going to keep muting everybody and looking at the questions. I'm eyeing them over here, down there in the corner. So I'll try to get to them as I go and make sure I cover them. Yes, I'm going right hand, left hand. I have tea and water, just so you guys aren't confused. How did he do that? Okay, let's get back into this with the buyers, working with the buyers. So the buyers, you're going to have these conversations with them, and you're going to have them sign a buyer's rep agreement. And if they say no, you're going to have to walk away. You're going to have this conversation with them that, hey, I want the seller to pay my compensation. We can look at 30 houses. We can spend the next 4 weekends together. We can do all this stuff together. But I do not get paid an hourly wage. I do not get paid a salary. I only get paid on a transaction that closes. It's very important. If you have not been doing that, you have to do that. You have to have it regardless of what's happened here with the NAR settlement. You have to have that conversation so that a buyer understands how we get paid. I am flabbergasted at how many people out there. I actually had clients that were PhDs from Stanford. Very, very smart people. When it came to like finance and the world, they weren't the smartest people in the world. But that's why they hired me. They had no idea that that it was 100% compensation, that we were independent contractors. They had no idea. They felt like, oh, if you're driving around with me for 8 hours, well, you're getting paid a salary, right? It's like, no. Oh, I didn't know that. So make sure you have that conversation as well with your buyers if you have not already been doing so. Always assume that they don't know how we get paid. So then set them up. Just have that conversation. This is how we get paid. This is how the industry works. This is what sellers are doing now. This is why we have a new buyer's rep agreement that is required by law. And this is why some sellers may say, no, they're not going to pay the compensation. And again, if the seller's saying no and the buyer's saying no, you got to take a time out and say, well, I can't work with you then. This is a waste of my time. I don't work for free. Most people will understand that. But again, you know, there's always these fringes of society where you get some people that are just, they're crazy. They're just like, they're not going to do it. And you have to be prepared to walk away. But most people, the vast majority, are like, yeah, I get it. I understand. Let's go ahead. Let's do this. We want to buy a house. We're excited. We've been pre-approved. We've been waiting for years for this. Let's do this. Make it fun. Like it always has been. And remember, our job is to alleviate a lot of the stress that's out there. Our job is to alleviate a lot of the pressure that is on these buyers and sellers. It's complicated. This is why I think we're going to be just fine. It's complicated. It's stressful. There's a lot of litigious aspects to it. There's a lot of potential lawsuits that can happen. There's a reason there's a huge E&O policy here at the company, unfortunately. So it's difficult out there. So our jobs, I think, are going to be just fine. But we do have to do these steps. So you've had this conversation with the buyers. You prepared the buyers. Now, the final big piece of what we have to do representing these buyers is as we go and show homes, you're not going to see a commission offered in the MLS listing. And again, Seattle, we have hundreds and hundreds of agents in the Seattle market, in the Northwest MLS. The Northwest MLS is different. And again, I'll get into the MLSs because that says right there, that's my third topic after buyers and sellers. But for the most part, the settlement with realtor associations says that the MLS listings cannot offer compensation. The seller can't even offer compensation. Can they offer it in the agent remarks? Nope. There's nowhere on there they can offer a commission to the selling office. If you're confused by that, the selling office means the buyer's agent. The conversation you're going to have with the listing agent now is, are you offering a commission? It could be a text message, okay? So you could have a text message, you could email them, you could do a phone call. This is a phone, by the way, because I don't have a banana near me. You can do all these things, but before you go into that house, you're gonna have to take the step of saying, hey, I've got a buyer, we're ready to go, they're pre-qualified, we're interested in your house. Are you offering a commission? Very simple, right? Take a sip of water, let you guys think on that. Are you offering a commission? So now when I say hard conversations, that's kind of as hard as it gets. And then you're going to have to just simply go, okay, you are great. 90% of the people out there, the sellers, they're going to be offering a commission. Oh, yeah. No, we're offering a commission. We want you to bring buyers along. We want to get this thing done like we've always gotten it done. Fantastic. Now, how about 3 o'clock? Great. So you're doing a little more legwork before you go show the house, and you're confirming that they're offering a commission. Now, I definitely want to encourage you. You can see people are talking about the crazy unmuted people that did their thing, but they're gone now. So you're going to have to get it in writing. Now, this has been my mantra for years and years and years. Too many people are like, hey, I had a phone conversation and they agreed to this. I'm like, did you get it in writing? And they often say no. So get it in writing. Do this very simple thing. Hey, it was great talking to you on the phone today. Just want to confirm what we talked about, and type out, this is typing. Actually, I do have a keyboard right here. This is typing. Type out in your email, I want to confirm that your seller is offering a 2.5% commission. Oh, yeah. That's great. Yeah, bring those buyers by. Always confirm it. And ultimately, you're going to be putting it on the contract. But at least this way, you've got it in writing before you go show the house. Then you go show the house. Then your clients love it. And then you're putting an offer together and you're doing all the things you normally would do. And you present that offer with additional, the condition of the seller paying your commission. So you're going to have to be crystal clear on a lot of things, a lot of steps along the way. You're going to have to be very, very clear about what is being offered, confirming that they're offering a commission, and getting it on paper what that number is. A quick question, Bonnie, because she's fantastic. Can it be over text? Yes. Yeah, it can be over text. Text is a viable legal way to communicate. So judges do accept text. And a lot of people, I'll just go off on a little tangent here. A lot of people don't understand when they, especially when they ask me some questions sometimes, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? It doesn't matter if a judge doesn't like it. Ultimately, all this paperwork we're doing is so that one party can go in front of a judge and get them to decide what is going to happen, what the outcome is going to be. So we don't decide it. I can't tell you how many people are like, well, let's get the designated brokers together and they'll, hash it out. Well, yeah, we can do that. But if one party or the other just refuses to budge, then you simply enforce the contract through a court. So what is in writing is very important. And back to Bonnie's question, a text is fine. You can submit that in court and say, hey, you, and you go to court over commissions too, or, you might be mitigated or arbitrated in the association or the local MLS. But you present that evidence and that is enough, most likely, but don't take a chance. This is it's very important right now moving forward. Don't take a chance. Don't assume anything's going to happen. Don't assume you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Don't assume anything. Make sure everything is in writing. Make sure everyone understands the terms, not just the terms of the contract, which is important. Hey, the inspection is going to be this date. We're going to close on this date. Our financing is this much down. All those terms are really important. But now we have to add more to it, and we have to make sure that the commission's in there, in writing, crystal clear. Everybody knows who is paying what. You may end up negotiating that. Let's say the seller, your buyer's agency agreement says 2%. Seller's not offering anything. You get into the negotiations and you're like, okay, the seller's going to offer 1% and the buyer's going to offer 1%. Okay, great. Let's get that in writing. So we get that kind of stuff in writing and we agree to it really before anything is consummated. As we're consummating the transaction, make sure everyone is crystal clear on what they're agreeing to. Okay. So, and then it just goes through like it normally would. Order, make sure title and escrow is there. You deposit the earnest money. You order the inspection. You talk to the lender. You get them a copy of the contract. You get title, copy of the contract. You get all these things done. You get the dates met. It gets to escrow. It closes. Or the inspection is done. You do an inspection contingency. You've got a response. You're like, yeah, you got to fix the plumbing. There's mold in the attic. Okay, the buyer or seller says, okay, I'll do that. This is writing on a contract. But you agree to all that and you just move forward to close. Turn over the keys, get your lockbox off there. Everything works out the way it always has. So this is not the end of the world. The sky is not falling in real estate. This is just another couple conversations and another couple pieces of paper that we're going to have to manage. Okay. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything here.
I
Oh.
think you covered most of the questions, Joe. So yeah. So
Okay.
those that asked questions earlier, I think the longer they waited, they got some of that, but we can open the Q&A again afterwards if there's still
Yeah,
questions.
thanks, Kendra, for monitoring that. I mean, I do see a lot of questions coming through and stuff, and I'm trying to be as thorough as possible.
Yep.
It's really important that you guys understand this is an ongoing process. This basically it's like, hey, this is what we're doing now. And then everyone's like, well, where's the paperwork? What's the change? When is it happening? So it's an ongoing process. So we're all learning as we go along. So it's really important that we stay open and we listen and we keep reading the emails that are coming through from whether it's the association or the state. And it's really, or from me and our team, it's really important that everybody follow what is going on with this Association of Realtor Settlements. Okay, and there's a lot of information coming through. You're probably getting a ton. I mean, I get 30 a day of like, hey, this is an update, and this is happening, this is happening. Oh, I've got it highlighted right here. Keep calm and carry on. That actually came from the realtors. That is a good one. From the Oregon realtors yesterday. It is important to keep calm and carry on. It's mostly going to be what we have already done. So that is important. Now, people have asked me, how can you offer commission since you can't do it on the listing? You can do it on your website. So be prepared for that. If you have your own website, you can do it. You can do it through a flyer. If you've got a listing and you're offering a commission, go to Zip My Flyer or Zip Your Flyer. I don't know, I forget what it is. It's been a while since I've used it, but they used to be great because you can get into an area. You can get into, it could be the Portland area, or it could be all of Multnomah County, or it could be all of Oregon. And you can send that flyer out for 30, 40, 50 bucks, depending on how many people it reaches. And you can say, we are offering a commission. You're going to have to put those commissions on your marketing material. You just can't advertise it in a listing. That's where you can't do it. But you can let people know, hey, absolutely, we are commission friendly. I bet you see that one coming along. Commission friendly. All this stuff's going to get ironed out. But if you're offering a commission, you're going to want to let people know because they've got the buyers and you want to attract them to your listing. So that's primarily it. The details of the settlement are not elaborate. We've only been kind of released a little bit of it. Certainly, we're not getting into the real details that the lawyers have hammered out. But that's effectively it. These changes are coming mid-July, summer-ish, somewhere in there. Hopefully the legislatures of the state you're in enact that at a legislative level so that nobody can say, hey, you're forcing me to use a buyer's rep agreement. I'm going to go to this other company that's not. That's why it's so important. And I know all the MLSs that are realtor associations, they're absolutely going to make sure that you do it this way so that one party or one member is doing something different than another member. Because that's really going to be important as we prepare the buyers to be signing a buyer's rep agreement. They're just going to have to. Yes, Kendra, you're bringing that up, and I've got that in this note. My third.
I was just answering a question that was earlier. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm going to get into that as well. This is the spice I was talking about in my email this morning. I'm going to take it a little bit deeper. I gotta have both tea and water. No, just water. It's getting hot in this office. You can see the sun came out behind me. Which way? That over there. Yeah, so I got these big windows and the sun's beating down, so it's nice. I'm getting warm, getting toasty, need cold water. I told Kendra this morning in an email that it was going to be a little bit spicier than what the realtors are putting out. The realtors are really covering their butts in this thing. And I'll be totally honest with you. I am not a fan of the realtors. I haven't been in 30 years. The first time I paid my dues, I was like, hey, what do I get for this? They said, oh, we got a great dental plan. I looked into their dental plan. It was like $1 off a year. I mean, it was like, what? That's not even close to a benefit. That's almost embarrassing that you're offering that. What they offer is an MLS. They offer the access to that MLS and that equipment and the sharing of information to make our jobs easier. And that's a good thing. That is expensive, that MLS software and the management of all these people, making sure the rules are followed, hearing arbitrations. They do things. But for 100 years, they were these small little teeny associations all over the place. And they were all realtor-owned MLSs, except the big bad boy in Washington, the Northwest MLS, and the Denver MLS. Now, the Denver MLS is really an interesting thing. This is where I think the country is going to go. It's a little known fact that the realtors actually offer what they call board of choice. Now, they didn't want to advertise that because they didn't want people to not pay their realtor fees, so they could take the hundreds of millions of dollars, give them to Congress, give them to the president. They have just been a huge behemoth of a political institution for too long. That's been one of my problems with them. That and billing people in January, it's like, what are you doing? Everyone's business is down. Bill them in June or July. That's when you need to bill them, when the agents don't feel the stress of the holidays and a low time in the season. That's always fallen on deaf ears. I don't know that it will much anymore. Hopefully they make that change. The board of choice. So Denver's fantastic. It's like, I can be a member, let's say as a participant, as the owner of the company. And then some of our agents in Denver can be realtors and some don't have to be. You choose if you want to pay the realtors or not. I do think that's going to be coming down the pike quite a bit. And then Northwest MLS, the Seattle, Western Washington, big behemoth MLS, they're not a realtor association. You do not have to be a realtor to be in that in that MLS. In the Northwest MLS, they can advertise the selling office commission. So if they're offering 2.5%, they'll be able to do that in the Northwest MLS because they're not a realtor association and they're not part of this settlement. This settlement is a realtor thing, along with a lot of the big box companies out there, big box real estate companies. So they're going to be able to, they're going to kind of have a competitive edge. People are going to be like, the Northwest MLS, this is awesome. And I agree, it is great. You can still offer that commission and you don't have to call up the listing agent and ask what the commission is. So the question is going to be, are the realtor MLSs going to switch? Are they going to change to a non-realtor MLS owned by a nonprofit entity? I don't know. I suspect that is where it's going. I suspect that is something that's going to happen. Also, consolidation. I see here some RMLS stuff. Oh, Samantha. Yeah, so the RMLS is a realtor association MLS, but they've got other realtor. It's like a bunch of these realtor associations, Clark County and East Metro and Portland Metro and blah, 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 blah. There's like 10 of them, all in the Portland Metro area. There's absolutely no need for that many realtor associations. In fact, I would argue you could have one realtor association for the entire state. That's kind of my position, and that's what I'm going to be advocating for. Now, obviously, in the settlement, the realtors are saying nothing about that kind of stuff because, in my opinion, they do have a monopoly. They have 1,000 little mini monopolies in each area. They own it all. You can't go to Joe's MLS and have your listing be on Joe's MLS and have everyone have access to that listing with lockboxes and all that. You can't do that. They're the only game in town. And I suspect my wife actually said, be careful about saying this. The realtors are going to come after you. I'm not worried about that because I'm a member. But I suspect there's going to be consolidation, small little associations getting together like in Portland, and there's just one realtor association with the RMLS, connected with the RMLS. So those kind of changes are going to happen. And again, is it going to be a non-realtor MLS? I mean, all of us should be screaming at them to make it a non-realtor MLS so you can advertise the commission offered. But right now, if it's realtor affiliated, you cannot advertise that. You cannot put that on the listing. So board of choice is a possibility. Consolidating MLSs and realtor associations is a possibility. Here in Washington State, I would love it if the Northwest MLS were one MLS for the entire state of Washington. So we have access, if you live in Spokane, you have access to Seattle houses. If you live in Vancouver, you have access to Bellingham houses. And they managed everything, had one MLS to manage, and just did it all. And if you chose on the side, like we do in Seattle, because there is a realtor association there, and people are realtors, but they don't have to be. I would prefer that. And I think we're going to evolve into something like that. So let's wait and see. And hopefully they don't sue me for talking about this. I just think, after the settlement, there's a lot of things that are unsettled that are going to have to be addressed and changed. Okay, let me look at some of this.
I think that question came up a lot, Joe. So explaining the separation and difference of some MLSs not being affiliated with an association. You can be or not be, but then others are controlled. You have to belong to an association. Really makes a compact difference for the agents to understand. So a lot of the questions got answered from that. Thank you.
Oh, good. And thank you for supplementing that, Kendra. It's confusing. Things are changing. Times are changing.
One of the big questions, and I'm sure you're getting to it, Joe, but majority of the questions is still compounding. How, if we get on the MLS and the co-op commission says 0, how are we going to negotiate that on a buyer's contract or the buyer's side? How do we deal with getting paid on the buyer's side? That's a lot of the questions.
Yeah, and I know you all want to get paid. Heck, I want to get paid. Actually, I wish I could do real estate again. I love doing real estate, by the way, but I am too busy now running the company that I don't have time. I have to refer it off, and that's just how it is, stage of life. But back when I did it full time, I loved doing real estate. I get where you guys are coming from. What are these changes? How is this going to affect my income? And it is going to affect your income a little bit. Also, be ready for pushback. Be ready for sellers to say, I'm not paying anything. Be ready for when you call up and you say, are you offering a commission, a buyer's agency commission? Nope. Or selling office commission. It does get confusing. And they say no. Then you've got to turn to your buyer and say, well, are you prepared to pay me what we put on this buyer's rep agreement if you buy this house? And they might say, no, I don't want to. That's why you have to have a very serious conversation up front with those buyers saying, this is how it works. This is how we all get paid. It's kind of confusing. I get it, but it comes from the Sitzer lawsuit in Kansas City in 2023, and then the settlement in 2024 with the NAR. I mean, you can explain all of that. But ultimately, you're going to have to say, if they're not offering a commission and my buyer doesn't want to pay a commission, we can't look at houses that are offering no commission. It's a hard conversation. Then what happens when the buyer's like, well, I want that house. That's our dream house. And your buyer's rep agreement says $100 on it, or 0.001%, something negligible. And they want to buy the house anyway. You're going to have to say, I can't help you. Contact the listing agent and they'll write up the offer and explain to them dual agency, the risks of dual agency, the risks of not negotiating a good deal for them, the risks of not understanding title insurance, the risks of not understanding escrow, inspections, finance. You're going to have to explain to them. Again, this is why I started this. It's a hard conversation to have with the buyers. You're just going to have it. You're going to have to tell them how we're paid and what could happen. And you're going to have to be prepared to walk away.
So Joe, can those not be negotiated on the buyer's behalf if the buyer says, I can't pay that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you ask the seller to pay it? Can that not be negotiated in the purchase and sell contract?
Absolutely. So I'll just kind of follow up on that. Thank you for keeping me on track. You can negotiate anything. You can, and when you're coming into this sucker, they're saying, nope, I'm not paying it. Buyer doesn't have the money. They're not going to pay it. Then you start negotiating. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have to negotiate with that listing agent, convey to that listing agent that, hey, I've got a buyer. They're ready, willing, and able. They're pre-qualified. They're ready to go. I need to get paid. And they don't have any money. They're first-time home buyers. They just scrimped and saved, and they've got their small down payment, and that's it. And then see where it goes. And again, any negotiation can end badly. You know, it can end any way. So you might find that, again, the seller's just like, nope, I'm not paying a thing. And you're going to have that hard conversation with the buyer. Can we move on to another house? They're not going to pay my commission. You don't have the money to pay my commission, first-time home buyers. But at least at this point, you've already talked about that. Again, the hard conversation you're going to have with the buyer that, hey, if we find a house that's not offering compensation and I can't negotiate them paying me my compensation, are you okay with us moving on to the next house? This is the confusing part of this sucker. And yeah, it drives me crazy too. I'm like, God, I wish they didn't do it this way. You know, most sellers before were just fine. They signed a listing agreement. Yeah, 6%. I'm going to pay you 3 and them 3. And, you know, I get it. I'm good to go. So this is where we are now. So yeah, get used to having those hard conversations. You're going to have them. I look down here and there's 30 new questions. Thanks, Matt.
Most of them have been answered. They're going back and forth, so you're good.
Okay.
And so the importance of that, so that the agents understand, look, seller's rep and you work for a seller, whether or not they offer compensation, it's always been possible. So work out the deal. You have maybe a co-op in the backside, but it's not going to be posted on MLS, right? Not a big deal.
Right, unless it's a non-realtor MLS, like the Northwest MLS, it'll be posted on that. But the vast majority, those of you in Seattle, you're like, well, isn't every place like this? No, most are not. Most are Realtor Association MLSs. And those of you that are Realtor Association MLSs, you're like, really? Seattle's not? Huh? Yeah, it's not.
So Northwest MLS will still show that co-op because they're not affiliated with I was getting to the one question. The rest of you, if it says 0, again, Joe's explaining the negotiation. You're going to have to have a discussion with the buyer, but there's options, right? If they can't pay it. So don't panic, but be able to be in position of explanation. You're working for that buyer in their best interest. And this is what you could possibly propose going forward. Whether the seller agrees in that purchase and sell or counters or whatever, we don't know. That's the unknown. And that's supposed to start in July. We know most of you have informed us it's already started in your areas at 0 co-op and da-da-da. What do you do? So this is why we're having this conversation, to make sure that you guys are getting into your comfort zone of business as usual, just a little different. Some states have even come out with compensation agreements already between brokerages for this. So Oregon has one. I'm still checking on other states, Joe, but anyway,
they're all working on it right now. This is a very fluid moment right now. The legislatures, the realtors, MLSs, they're all working on this right now. So some may come out tomorrow, some may come out at the end of the year. I know Oregon they said they're going to come out with new Broker agreements, which passed and take effect January 1st, 2025. My guess is they'll probably move that up. It's a little bit shocking, but again, in Washington, it kind of the shock wore off after a couple months. So Washington, we're kind of getting used to it. But other states, you're going to have to get used to it. This is not business as normal. This is different, but it's not the end of the world. Again, the sky is not falling; it's staying up there. You should expect in the negotiations that people will negotiate those commissions a little harder. It's going to be hard to sell. You know, let's say you're working with a buyer, and getting that commission 3% on a $2 million home, $60,000. That's probably going to be a little more tough to come by. You're going to get sellers saying, okay, fine, I'll offer it to you, but it's $2 million. I'll pay you 1%. That's $20,000. What say you? You're going to have to think about it. Yeah, I mean, you know, and then the other question is going to be, can you just not accept that commission and walk away even though the buyer wants that house? These are a lot of things that haven't been thought through yet. You know, we haven't seen any case precedents out there. We haven't seen any lawsuits happen out there. We don't know where this is going to end up. But I do know from this industry and 30 years in it that the reason I'm gray is because of a lot of lawsuits, a lot of stuff, a lot of threats, nasty grams, state requirements, regulations. I mean, it's not an easy industry. And you add how litigious it is without representation, is going to be even worse. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits between buyers and sellers if they don't have representation. It could be as little as, well, not little. It could be something like a seller that knows of a big mold problem, or let's say a termite problem or something like that, doesn't disclose it, takes advantage of the buyer not getting an inspection because they're so anxious to buy it, low inventory and all. And they know there's a problem, but they didn't disclose it. Then the buyer moves in and they're like, oh my God, all this damage, what happened? Well, you didn't get an inspection and you weren't represented. There's no real estate firm to sue, except maybe the listing agent. Dual agency. So again, we don't know. I think a lot of you, and I feel your frustration, a lot of you want definitive answers. I do too. But I'm telling you right now, there are not clear, definitive answers yet. It is a fluid process. We're going to move through it over the next few months, and we'll kind of see how it goes. So for the most part, yeah, go ahead.
When this comes in effect, so the NAR part of it is July, you guys. All right. Again, I'm hearing from agents East Coast to West Coast that some of this has already started being zero in the co-op side from a listing agent. So, but the actual start date that was sent out was it didn't need to start until July, okay, 1st. So, but we can't control listing agents and MLSs and tell them what to do. But so if you're seeing it already, July 1st was when it was supposed to be implemented on MLSs, that it wasn't going to show anything. And now if you're seeing zero, that doesn't mean there isn't commission. It just means they're starting the process. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Great point. No, that's exactly what it is. You can negotiate anything. Carly Willis has got a good point here. Do you expect to see more of a a la carte type agent for buyers? You know, $30 per door showing, 5K write up. Yeah, I do. I expect to see more of that. I don't think it'll be as commonplace. I've heard that recently, and it's going to be up to you. It's going to be up to you to what you want to do. So again, you've got to have in-depth conversations with your buyer saying, this is the nature of real estate, working with buyers right now. I don't work for free. My time is valuable. My experience is valuable. I bring something to the table. How do we want to do this? And they might say, well, you know what, I just want to look at 2 houses. I'll pay $100 per house and a $5,000 write-up fee, something like that. But you're going to have to be aware, and you're going to have to negotiate and have these discussions with everybody, with your buyer, with the seller, well, maybe not with the seller, with the listing agent, You know, with your spouse. You might, I know if I was way back when, I spent an entire summer, every weekend for an entire summer working with buyers, they didn't end up buying. My spouse was upset about that. So, yeah, you're just going to have more conversations with more people going forward.
So Joe, let me hit a few points for you
Yeah, go ahead.
In the chat. So some of the agents are seeing basically buyer's agents charging upfront the buyer a fee to even go out and spend like a day or 14 hours of time showing them homes. So like a flat rate, $700, things like that. Do you see any of that coming about?
Yep, I do. And again, I will say this slowly. I see all of the above happening. So it just, I mean, it depends on your situation and that buyer. You might have a buyer's rep agreement. Try this out. I have a buyer's rep agreement for one day. Hey, I want to look at one house, but I don't want to commit to anything. I'll do a buyer's rep agreement for one day. I'll pay you, $100 to just look at that one house, and then it expires. And then the next day you might have to do a new buyer's rep agreement for one day, one house, or for 7 days, 7 houses. It's going to get weird. Like there's no solid concrete way to do this. So we're going to have to kind of muddle through it a little bit and figure out like what each buyer needs, what each seller needs, is offering, wants, and we're going to have to communicate. The 2 phones means communicating. We're going to have to communicate more than we have in the past. It's not going to be as easy, but it's still going to happen. Real estate's going to happen.
Right. Deputy had a great question. If the seller expresses willingness to cover certain expenses, whether it's a certain percentage for the co-op buyer or the concession towards a buyer's fee, are they permitted to put that in the MLS details and in their marketing details?
I believe so, as long as it's not a commission offered for a buyer's agent. Is if they're saying, hey, willing to do $5,000 in closing costs towards buyer closing costs, I think you're going to be able to do that from what I've read.
But not necessarily offering a buyer's co-op in the agent remarks or public remarks. No.
You're going to have to be very careful about what you offer. So to answer your question, no, you cannot offer compensation for the buyer's rep in the agent remarks.
Okay. They've had a buyer.
The seller concessions, yeah, because that's the seller. Again, this lawsuit settlement is to supposedly protect the seller.
Okay, and once the buyer has signed an agency agreement, how are we going to be able to ensure that agreement remains firm and legal for the commissions?
Okay, so I already talked about that, and it's a little surreal to me sometimes. And again, I don't talk to everybody all the time about it, but in my world, I get it a lot. And anything agreed to by 2 parties that is on paper, the contract, is mitigated or decided by a judge. It's that simple. That's simple. Now, the MLSs have their own kind of rules and some commission stuff, just so you avoid lawsuits and you get to arbitration. So that can happen. But in arbitration, it's a judge, you're typically a retired judge. Sometimes it's an MLS board and stuff like that. But if you have a contract and the buyer signed that contract and you're owed money per that contract, you can't come to your designated broker. You can't. I'll help you. I'll help steer you towards an attorney in a lawsuit if you want. But it's not like designated brokers have a magic wand that we're just like, hey, you're gonna get this commission. I've decided. I'll put my grand poobah hat on and I just make all the decisions. That's not how it works. In our country, if you have a piece of paper between 2 parties and it's signed by both parties, to enforce that contract, you go to court. Okay, for anything, not just real estate contracts. That's why the courts are there, to enforce those contracts.
Great. And that's a great question. This
I-
one is, will Kelly Wright create in-house contract form that can help with these compliances, or will we depend on the state contract forms to deal with that?
The states will come up with them, and the realtor associations. I've been talking to a few different realtor attorneys, people I've known for a long time. They're working on it right now. The settlement has happened, and so the realtors are in scramble mode to put this stuff into place so that the forms are part of the state contracts offered.
Awesome.
I'm not writing law. Like I did this already. In fact, the attorney for the state of Washington, she and I laugh about it. She uses it in her classes, saying, "Oh yeah, Joe Kelly, 30 years ago, he and Alan Orozco wrote up contracts for escalation clauses, and we got a cease and desist, which we did, but then they ended up pretty much using what we had as the official form. So I do know if we write them up, we're probably practicing law. So let the states write them up. Let the states get together, the legislature, the attorneys, let them get together and formulate what forms need to be out there.
So keep up with your MLSs, your Association of Realtors, if you belong to one, and watching these contract forms that are coming out updated. Make sure you review them and feel comfortable with them. That's what we're going to depend on for Kelly Wright. So this next one's a great question. Can they at least write commission-friendly seller in comments? Of course, that might be a maybe. Okay.
I like where you're going with that, whoever wrote that.
They're thinking Dimitri's on it. They're all going back and forth.
I like where you're going with that. Be careful. Be careful. I mean, I think in the first few months, of the summer when things really officially change and all that, I think there's going to be some warnings.
Mhm.
I read an article this morning about how is all this going to be enforced? Who's going to be the eyes and ears of everybody? And it's going to be hard. And there's going to be some gray areas like this where you're just saying, what did I call it before? Commission friendly, just a dog whistle of just saying commission friendly seller in agent remarks. I don't know how they're going to approach it, but I like the creativity. Just so if you guys don't know me and how I operate, I will go to the depths of hell for you as long as you're right. If you're not, then it's like, hey, you made a mistake. But I will fight for you and support you when needed. So if you do something like that, you can always run it past me. You can run it past the team, the broker liaisons, or anyone on the team, and just say, hey, does this seem right? And I'm putting this in the agent remarks. What do you think? Happy to interject. But the association lawsuit settlement says you cannot offer a commission in the agent remarks.
Yep. So this is just commission friendly, or yeah. So I like some of those ideas, you guys. That was awesome. And keep in mind your MLSs and associations also will have regulations on this. Like you can't put certain comments in agent remarks or public remarks. So keep in mind, we have 53 different platforms. Y'all that come to class know when I say platform, your software, right? So the MLSs and associations might have some rules and regulations. So we're just going to have to see how this plays out by July and make sure we're all kind of following through. The next one real quick was, do you see any lawsuits about discrimination, minorities, and low income, hopefully buyers? I don't know.
No, I don't see that. I mean, just, the rule, don't discriminate against anybody. We've been pounded with, and with good reason, we've been pounded on equal housing and also all the federal fair housing laws and stuff like that. And so, use common sense. If I had a listing, I was taking a listing and the seller's like, hey, I want to discriminate this way, that way, I just walk away. You got to use good sense and your training on how to see what they're trying to do. But no, we never discriminate against anyone.
And everybody's getting excited over this commission friendly again, until this is settled in July. And if the seller is bringing it up and will offer something in the seller's representation agreement, but doesn't want it on the MLS, is that something agent remark we can just put in agent remark, not public, but agent remark, commission friendly until they come up with more rules?
Yeah, until they say no. So that's kind of what is going to happen. You're going to have local realtor associations going, "Hey, wait, we flagged that, we caught it. You can't say that." They might fine you. My guess is they'll warn you first, warn you twice, fine you third time, something like that. As long as you don't say 3% commission offered. Again, I just came up with commission friendly. It could be something else. It just, call for commission information, something like that. I'm just wheeling and dealing these suckers out there, but it's gonna morph into something that is just something we haven't done in the past, but it's just something we're gonna have to do in the future. So just these conversations with listing agents are going to have to happen. And don't get too cute with the MLSs. The realtor associations are afraid right now, so don't get too cute on those realtor association MLSs trying to get as much into those agent remarks as possible. I know they're going to flag them, and they may make an example of someone. They may just be like, "Oh, this person, said commission friendly, and boom, here's $1,000 fine." So again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you that there will probably be workarounds. It's probably going to be something somewhat uncomfortable if you're not comfortable calling the listing agent, but it's certainly not the end of the world. Everyone's going to be used to
local association and MLS rules that are going to come out with this so that we're all staying on top of that. Real quickly, Northwest MLS, Vidya, just wants confirmation because they're not affiliated with an association at the local, state, or national level. They won't have to follow that rule of co-op commission. That's to you, Joe. Are they going to have to follow that rule? Are we going to see 0% being put in the Northwest MLS?
Maybe. And again, I empathize with you. I'm not trying to be flippant. There's a lot of undecided things out here right now. There's nothing out here that couldn't change, that couldn't morph into something else. Right now, as it stands, the Northwest MLS is not a realtor association, so they should be able to offer commissions, but their attorneys might be like, Justin and his team over there might be like, "Hey, we're setting ourselves up for liability to be sued by the Sitzer group." So they might be like, "No, let's follow everybody else and not have that SOC in there." That could be. I just don't know. We're going to have to be patient and vigilant and watch what information we're getting from our MLSs and just kind of see as we go.
Great. One more.
Meg asked if there was a corporate attorney. No, we don't have corporate attorneys on staff. I wish I were that rich. I wish I made so much money off you guys. We have a whole team of corporate attorneys down here. They're just down there playing pool and they're just ready to go. No, I keep things very lean because I want you guys to keep 100% of your commission. I want you to keep as much as possible, especially when the commissions are going to change a little bit and there might be some dynamics involved where keeping 100% of it is critical. So we have to remain lean. That's the reason we don't have big fancy offices. We operate centrally, and corporate attorneys would blow the bank up. We wouldn't be able to do what we do if we had that.
Another great question. Buyer representation agreement with a buyer, charging $100 per day for showings. Showed the client put off within 6 months of showing. The buyer shall pay 2.5%, and the seller is refusing an offer to include the commission.
You might have to walk away. I know it's not what you want to hear, but you're gonna, if the parties can't get together, if a seller's like, "I'm not paying a commission," and the buyer's like, "I'm not paying a commission," you're gonna have to walk away. You can't work for free. So I want to help you guys. So if you have a situation where that is happening real time, contact us. Reach out to the team. Reach out to me. Reach out to the liaisons. Reach out to the people that we can try to get together, put our heads together, and see what we can come up with. But ultimately, there's no magic wand. I think I talked about the magic wand earlier. There's no magic wand that says, oh, this, I'm a designated broker. This is what's going to happen. It's like if the buyer and the seller just aren't going to do it, that commission's not going to be there. And you're going to have to move on to the next.
Here's a great example already happened, Northwest MLS. Listing offering 0 buyer agent commission. But in the remarks, it says buyer broker compensation is negotiable per the RCW 18.86.
Kendra, take a drink of water or a green tea. This is the time of the day to drink green tea. So note to all of you, be healthy. Yeah, RCW 1886. Yeah, buyer broker compensation. It is negotiable. Again, that's where you're getting on the phone before you even show a house saying, hey, you're not offering any commission in the listing. What are you really offering? I've got pre-qualified buyers. What are you offering? And start with that conversation. And again, you've already had the conversation with the buyer, so they're prepared when you say, yeah, I called them, they're not offering a commission, you don't want to pay me. Do you want to move on to the next house? And hopefully they just say, yeah, let's move on to the next house. This is the risk a seller runs when they're not going to offer anything. They got to offer something. And I'm the least greedy person out there, which is why I run the company the way I do. I want to make sure you guys keep as much money as possible. But I'm always shocked at people that are just like, they're making $900,000. We just had it on Friday, making $680,000 on a house, and they wouldn't pay $1 in commission. I was like, that is one greedy woman. So, and our agent suffered a little bit on it. And so it's going to happen, but you're going to nip it in the bud if up front you have those conversations with your buyer first. And then you ask the seller, hey, is a compensation being offered? So,
and here's a good point that Anna's brought up. However, we're saying if they can't pay, however, we have a fiduciary duty to show all properties regardless of how it's offered, correct? Question mark. So if low-income buyer can't pay, what is the fear that, no, I can't pay you, affect the buyer's agent in not showing certain properties?
Yeah. Anna, how is that going to affect us? I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what I would do, and I would not write up that whole sucker. It's just that if I'm not getting paid, if the buyer's not going to pay me, the seller's not going to pay me, I'm out. So then the buyer might be forced to go to the listing agent and say, hey, I can't get someone to write up an offer because I can't pay them and you're not offering anything. I guess we're just in a dual agency thing where you represent me, but the seller is your uncle. You guys seem pretty tight. Like, am I going to get a good deal on this thing or not? Again, we don't know. We just don't know how this is going to shake out. But I'm not working for free. I'm too old for that. Like, you shouldn't either. You shouldn't have to work for free just because the state says, oh, you're a fiduciary. The state's also saying, hey, you have to do it this way and not make money. No, that doesn't make any sense. Right. So we're gonna have to work through this together as you get into those situations. What I'm hoping for is that we limit those situations to 5% or 4% or 3% or even less. That'd be great. But right now, you're going to be out there and there's going to be confusion. You're going to have sellers who are like, hey, I saw the lawsuit and the settlement and I don't have to offer commission anymore. Woohoo! It's like, really? Now, hopefully that listing agent talks them and talks some sense into them. Because it's just, do you really want to sell this thing and not offer anything? So my guess is it's going to morph into offering something. It might be a little less, probably not going to be more, but it might be a little less, but offering something. And I would suggest to my sellers, offer something substantial, offer something that makes it worthwhile, because people they won't say it, but they will steer their clients away from a house that is not offering commission.
Gary Roth had a good point. Is there a different word than commission? And I'm thinking in my mind, compensation.
I love you guys. This is awesome. A different word. Way to go there. I don't know. I suspect the realtors are pretty freaked out right now. And if you're putting other words in there, I think they're going to catch it. If another agent can catch it, say, oh, wink, wink, I'm offering a commission. I think what we just have to do is, agent remarks, doing something like commission offered, call to negotiate commissions. Again, it's an RCW in Washington, Revised Code of Washington, that basically says, commissions are negotiable. So if you put in agent remarks, hey, call to negotiate commission, well, there's an invite, a big old invitation right there. So we're going to have to do some of this stuff. We're kind of making it up on the fly. We're just all of a sudden this stuff got thrown at us, and we're like, whoa, okay, so the realtors were naughty for 100 years. Now we have to pay the price for that.
Yeah, I think another word is compensation. This is a good one, Natasha. Thank you. I think it's a big concern for a lot of agents that are more on the buying or buyer agent side. But what if they claim discrimination against us because we say, hey, we're in a buyer's rep agreement, but I won't show you that home because there's no compensation. That's a big concern.
It's not a protected class. A buyer that doesn't have any money is not a protected class.
Okay.
I will say I won't leave it at that. Here's what I'll say. You got to have a harder conversation with the buyer in that buyer's rep agreement and really understand and make them understand how much money they're willing to pay if the seller won't pay. That, again, hard conversations have to start from the start. That'd be a song, I think. Start from the start. I don't know. It'd be a dumb song. Probably not make any money on that one. But you're going to have these conversations. You got to have these conversations. I know they're uncomfortable. I know we don't want to do it, but you have to have them. And ask that buyer, you don't have any money. What if the seller's not offering compensation? I can't show you 40 houses and write up offers for nothing. What should we do?
Okay, and you're going to get asked, basically, if I present an offer from a buyer, however, because we request a compensation when there's no response or they stop responding, how will we deal with that, and who is going to monitor that if there's a legal route to compensation?
I don't know how we're going to monitor that. I don't know how anyone's going to monitor all this. So I say it, and poor Kendra, I think Matt's on this, maybe a few other employees are on this. They know my drill. It's like, yeah, great idea. So how are you going to implement it and manage it? Because I've done it for so long, I know that implementation and managing a lot of stuff is difficult. Like, it could be a full-time job. So I don't know how the MLSs are going to say, oh boy, we might be losing some revenue from consolidating realtor associations, but we have to add a couple people. It's the same with us. Like, it's so hard to manage a lot of this, and you're forced. It's like the lawsuits happen, and the government forces this stuff on you, and then you're like, oh, okay, great, but what if it doesn't? What if I don't do that? Do I go to jail? Do I lose my license? Do I get bonked on the head with a big clown hammer? Who knows? Who knows? So I don't want to dismiss any of the questions. I just don't know how this is going to play out. None of us do. I do know it's going to be okay. So that's a big thumbs up. It's going to be okay. And I do know it's going to require more conversations and a little bit more work and adjustments that we haven't had to do in the past. So it will be okay.
I want to get to appreciating everybody on here that has used the letter X% or whatever in conversation, up to Trudy. Trudy, there is no actual percentages. So she posted some percentages there. Everything's been negotiable in the 25 years I've been in the industry. And Joe, you trump me 30. I don't know.
So we don't want to trigger people out there. We don't get political.
A little older.
Don't you guys dare type anything political in that chat room.
Look, there's no reason and we've always been negotiable, and that is a licensing law that it's between a seller and a buyer. So there's no percentages that have ever been set, no such thing as an industry standard, period. None of that. Okay.
Well, that's kind of why we're in this little predicament.
It might be because
Yeah.
everybody else said there was.
Wink, wink, only 6%. You don't even have to wink. Why did I even do that? They colluded, the big boxes colluded, and the realtors colluded for a long time saying 6% is it. 3% to you, 3% to you. You can't go any lower. And that's how all this started, was this
Right.
kind of colluding on numbers. So we're gonna have to, again, it's gonna be fluid. We don't know. Is it gonna settle at 2%, 1.5%? You're gonna have to decide on each time you represent a buyer what that commission is gonna look like. You know, is it $500? No, I'm not driving you around for a month for $500. No way. Find someone else. These kind of conversations are just gonna have to happen. And
I just want to say I winked at Trudy because Trudy, I love you dearly. She's been in the industry a long time. And again, there's this cloud over the industry right now. And you all have to understand when somebody types those things in, that's not Kelly Wright's philosophy and what we've been. So
and Rashad's saying 2.5%, 3%. I mean, the Northwest MLS, because it's so expensive, you know, when a starter house is $1 million, 1% is $30,000. But for the good people in Alabama or North Carolina, you know, $1 million home, you might not even find one on the entire MLS. So pricing is different in different areas, big cities, tech, money, all that. And so is 1% of $1 million home better than 3% of the $400,000 home? Yeah. So it's all fluid. Every market's different. All of us are going to be affected by this. The least affected is going to be the Seattleites and the Northwest MLS, because they're already doing this stuff. But for realtors out there, yeah, these changes are happening, and I don't know where the commissions are going to settle at, but they're going to be adjusted. You know, we're just going to have to get ready for that. And okay, wait, oh God, we got a moment. Do you guys see a light bulb up here? Like there's like a light bulb glowing above me right now. And no, it's not just my gray hair. On the listing side, here's what I kind of think is going to happen. I didn't just think of it now. I did think of it a few days ago, but it just occurred to me again. The listing side, when you get a listing, you're going to do a few more dual agent deals. And that's something I do want to focus in the next couple months on. So your buyer agent revenue is going to go down a little bit, but your listing agent revenue is going to go up a little bit, because you are going to get sometimes people saying, hey, you know what? I'm not offering a commission to the buyer's agent, or just people finding you on Zillow or wherever on the websites that are out there and just saying, hey, I don't want to sign a buyer's rep agreement, and I don't want to pay my buyer's agent a commission. So I'm just going to come to you directly and you write the offer up. And the new listing contracts will be more clear about, okay, 3% if I list it and another 1% if I sell it, if I represent dual agency and represent the buyer as a client or a customer. So there's going to be more compensation in a lot of listings. Obviously, the listings are going to be much more valuable, but we still can make a lot of good money with working with buyers, and buyers need us. So the changes are happening, and those changes are going to happen, continue to happen, and morph into something a year from now that we kind of see coming. Again, the sky's not falling. These are just changes. And there's other factors to consider here too. You know, the loan officers, loan officers can make up to 1-2%. So you're going to have to shop loans more carefully. Let's say you're making 2% on a $400,000 loan. That's $8,000. Well, in the loan officer's world, they don't do a lot of work once the loan goes through and gets to a processor. So the seller, I'm getting into the weeds. I didn't want to do this, but I'll do it anyway, because here we are. The seller doesn't want to pay compensation for the buyer's agent, but is willing to pay some closing costs. And the lender, the loan officer, is making 2% on this. Well, why can't the lender start kicking something in? and say, look, the lender can use part of their commission to help offset closing costs so that you can offer me a commission. So when it got to be kind of goofy negotiating, now we're bringing in the loan officer. And trust me, I've been a loan officer for 30 years. I know how it works. I own a lending company. There's money to be had there. And that's why I created Modus Mortgage. If you're coming into a tough situation, call us, call me. Let's look at what Modus can do. Because in the yield spread, if they're already paying like 7% on a 30-year fix, we can get them at 6.5. We can use that half-point yield spread to pay for closing costs. Then the seller's like, oh, fantastic. I don't have to pay closing costs. I'll pay you. Seller nets the same amount. The answer is in the numbers. And I used to be like, hey guys, use Modus Mortgage. Right now, more than ever, I can find the solution in the financing.
So that was one of the questions, Joe, is if lenders were going to start, sorry, I'm doing two things at once, type and, okay. If lenders were going to open opportunities for the buyers to include commissions in those concessions. That's not what you're saying. You're saying maybe the lenders will start opening up their part of it to offset some of the concessions.
That's right. So
and concessions wouldn't include.
And I'm always shocked at this. People are like, well, I love my bank. I love my credit union. I love my loan officer. I've worked with them in the past. And then I see at the end of the transaction that they've got a 7% interest rate. I'm like, are you nuts? And they charge 1% or whatever they charge. The money is in that percentage called yield spread premium. Used to be anyway. The money's there. So if you bring, if they're willing to get 7% and Modus is at 6.5%, but we say, okay, yeah, we'll get you 7%. We'll match exactly the terms that you have right now. But now there's $5,000 in yield spread that we can apply to closing costs. So then the seller's like, wow, okay, the lender's paying the closing costs. I now can give the buyer's agent $5,000. I know it's complicated, but again, I've been doing this and working in these margins for decades. This is where the money's made. And my team at Modus, they only charge a flat fee. So they don't jack up the rate so that you do get a better rate. Or if they do raise the rate to a competitive rate that is out there in the marketplace, that yield spread could make up the commission on the buyer's side.
Awesome. So those agents out there with buyers that have to work with the buyers, maybe doing, we don't like this word. Y'all know if I repeat what you say, it's gonna, okay, a flat rate fee or a compensation just to do paperwork or those kind of things, what the transaction fee, and I think a lot of them on here might not know that we have a tiered transaction fee. Do you want to cover that or you want me to?
You can do it. You give me the choice.
Because I do it every week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you guys that are on here, some of you that haven't attended orientation, okay, it's every Wednesday, but wow, I've been here 6 years. Joe's put up with me that long, right? I don't know. You're still putting up with me.
It's been easy.
All right, you guys, there are so many more business resources on your agent portal now that if you're not getting in there at least once a week, if you're not coming and attending orientation, a lot of these things you don't know. If the commission or compensation amount of commission is $2,001 and up, clear up, doesn't matter how far up, I've seen some pretty far ups, it's $209, okay? If the commission compensation, I'm going to change that word someday, I'm working on it, is $1,001 up to $2,000, it is $159 transaction fee. And then if the compensation of commission is $1,000 or less, because we look at, you know, is it a land thing or a rental deal or whatever, all right, that's $129 transaction fee. So we have a tier. if you fall in those lower. Anything $2,001 commission amount and up, you go out and negotiate with your buyers and your sellers and you get it figured out and work it out. It's open for what you guys need to do for your business. So hopefully I explained that right.
Yeah, I mean, you all know this, and maybe if you don't, if you're just joining us as a guest, I mean, our compensation package is the best in America. It's fantastic, especially with the support you get and the technology, KV Core, and all that. It's so making less money is less painful here than at the big boxes. I mean, if your commissions are going to shrink a little bit on the buyer side, and you're getting 30% taken out and then 6% franchise fees and then transaction fees and all that, it's like, oh my God, like they're just crushing me and my commission's been reduced. So our model is fantastic, especially in this environment. Now, I don't think commissions are going to go down that much, but they are going to have to be negotiated. You guys are just, I think we've beaten that India at this point, but let's just keep saying it a little longer so it sinks in. You're going to have to negotiate your commissions, and you're going to have to negotiate them early with the buyer and with the seller before you make an offer. Maybe before you even show the house. I wouldn't want to even show a house if they weren't offering a commission. So there are going to be ways to do this to make it palatable, but it is changing, and there's no way around that change. It's been seismic, this settlement. I actually thought they were going to fight a little harder. Realtors rolled over. Oh, spicy sauce. Yeah, you know why they rolled over, in my opinion? Kendra hates it when I talk bad about realtors. But they rolled over because they want to protect their monopoly. They rolled over quickly, and they got into this settlement so they can protect their monopoly on these MLSs. I firmly believe that in the next few years, we're going to get to a Telecommunications Act of 1996 type act that basically deregulates real estate and allows competitive MLSs to come into the marketplace and piggyback onto the MLSs that exist, just like they could with telecommunications in 96. So things are changing. Things are definitely changing. Maybe you will see Joe's MLS appear in all your cities. Maybe that'll happen in a few years. And I will charge you less. As you guys know, I will charge you less than the realtors or the Northwest MLS. Don't think that the Northwest MLS is some benevolent organization. They charge just as much as the realtors, and their fines are even higher. So I've noticed the fines getting really steep because they want the Benjamins. The one thing that is common for all of this, whether it's buyers, sellers, us, MLSs, realtors, is that we're all human. And that human nature tends to bubble up no matter what the situation. So they want their money. They're a nonprofit, but they want their money. Nicer offices, company BMW, I don't know, yacht. Anyway, I digress. Went off on a tangent.
I'm going to take this down to a couple last questions, but when you close off, Joe, give me time to copy all the questions. Look, I'm going to copy all of your questions, you guys, and if there's something that wasn't answered, reach out to us directly. But a couple last ones. I mentioned Agent Portal. Some of you mentioned OpCity. Look, we have probably 7 or 8 lead programs now in your Agent Portal. So those of you that don't log on in a monthly, weekly fashion might be losing opportunities. Is OpCity 30 or 40%? You bet. But that's pay at close. All right. Is that out of your pocket up front like some of these other lead programs? No. We have homelight.com, sold.com. Gosh, Joe, I'm going to lose it here, but
don't ask me. I already lost it.
Veterans United, Agent Pronto. Look, Joe and Kelly Wright has put together the minds of agents that have been successful in their careers and put together the best business resources for you guys. And I like to say they're free. They're free up front. You're going to pay at close, but that's 60 to 70% of something you didn't have. All right. And that 60 to 70% of a lead that come in. I have agents that are brand new to the industry, do $2 to $3 million in 4 months when they first start, when they use the lead programs. and they're faithful to it and they do it. All right. So some of the comments here were, yeah, but they're this percent. You know what? They are, but they also bring their friends, they bring their neighbors, they bring their sisters, their aunt and uncle. I bring Uncle Joe. Joe comes and buys. Okay. So you're building relationships. So those of you that have not been on orientation, join me on a Wednesday. I think Agent Portal, if you logged in right now, would blow your mind away. Okay. There's so many business resources, so many lead programs, so many things y'all are missing out on that you need to join me on a Wednesday because I'm fun.
And to supplement that, because I'm seeing some Op City stuff here. Op City's closed down for most of the markets right now. Just so you know, Op City is realtor.com.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of digital marketing in these markets and stuff like that. They've had so much participation that they've let us know that they're not adding new agents and stuff like that. So you just don't know what new source is going to open up and all that. But they do digital marketing in a market and they're getting leads. KV Core does digital marketing in your market. Yeah. If you want more leads and if you want to just bam, I want to get out there, digital marketing means geo-fencing around an area, a zip code, having all these messages that people type in, hey, homes in Coeur d'Alene, or buying a new home in Boise or anything like that. They can put those AdWords in there and do the geo marketing and the marketing for you. So, but you've got to pay the money. And too many agents think, hey, I want you to make it rain money, but I don't want to pay a dime. Think, what? Like, you got to pay some money, $1,000 a month, and you got to commit to it. So you can't just do it for a month and go, hey, it didn't rain money and I don't have any leads. You'll get leads, but then you put them in the CRM, the KV Core CRM, and then you work them every day and you work them. And if you do this over the course of a year, that's when the leads really start coming out of that funnel. So it takes money to make money. So make sure that you understand that they will do the digital marketing for you. The same thing Op City's doing. And yes, Op City, you're paying up front for your leads and to manage it. Op City pays you at the end. But companies like Op City are drying up a little bit. They've just got too much demand and not enough leads.
But we have other resources. So yeah, Veterans United has been amazing. I have Montana agents kicking butt. He's not going to put it here because he doesn't want anybody else in there. Anyway, he's going to tell me later, why'd you give it away? Look at the resources, get into your agent portal. There's lots of other lead resources in there. Ed, I appreciate the question. Agent trainings, Joe does every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. He'll have a subject. He'll open it to a half hour at the end, Q&A. Just throw things at him. It makes his hair grayer, and I like it. And his beard.
So, and we have, and I record them, so they're all on the portal. And Sam's our new employee, and he's going to clean up the portal, make it just more concise and easier to kind of go through. But everything we do on the training side, we record and we put on the portal. Yeah. So this stuff is easy enough to find. It's just a lot of people either they don't have time, they're busy that day, they don't want to go look at it, and then they ask me a question like, hey, what do I do on this seller disclosure? I'm like, did you see the training last week? I get it. You guys are busy, so I try to be empathetic as possible. But we do record them, like this one. It's going to be recorded. Sam's going to email this thing out probably tomorrow, so that people that missed it, they can get in on it. It's not everything that's going to happen with this settlement, but it's most likely. This is the stuff you're going to have to experience and the stuff you're going to have to prepare for. The future is just different. It's not worse. It's not better. It's just changing. But I'll end on this because we are approaching 2 hours. I will end on this because we always end on a positive message. The real estate market is ready to boom. It is ready to pop. And what I mean by that is interest rates have been hanging high for 2 years. We had to fight inflation. They're going to start creeping down. The Fed still seems committed to lowering it 3 times. Because that's, 3/4 of a point, 75 basis points down over this next 8 months. They said this year, 2024. If they do that, it's an indirect correlation mortgage rates are based on the 10-year treasury yield, but that yield is kind of loosely tied to those Fed rates. As they get pulled down, those mortgage rates are going to come down. And I'm telling you, we get into the fives, you got a 30-year fix for 5.75 or 5 7/8, you're going to see an absolute boom in real estate. And that's just 6 months away. So right now we're getting into real estate season. It's almost April, so there is business out there. I think business is going to pick up and pick up. And as we get into 2025 and 26, those rates are going to come down. They're never going back down to 3%. Don't be confused or fantasize about them coming back down to 3%. They're not. But if we settle in a 4 3/4, 5 for a 30-year fix, somewhere in there, there's going to be a ton of activity. Like I know it because there's pent up demand, there's pent up buyers, there's pent up sellers who are like, I don't want to sell and buy something at 7%, but at 4.5%, 5%, I can do that. And we've got millennials who are the biggest generation in U.S. history, and they're at that age of buying right now. So the future is pretty bright. We just went through a tough 2 years. It was a post-COVID, inflation fighting, interest rate thing we had to go through. And that was about 2 years, and now it's going to start improving. So be optimistic. Do not be freaked out by some of these Association of Realtor changes. They're not the end of the world. It's just going to require a few more conversations, some extra paperwork we haven't had to do in the past, and then we carry on with our business and manage it accordingly. And we are always here to help you guys. So I appreciate you so much. Hang in there. I love it. Real estate is a dynamite industry, and it's not going away just because we have to negotiate a commission when we represent a buyer. It's not going away at all. It's just hard conversations at the front end, in the middle, and towards the back end. And we'll be just fine. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Thank you. Bye.